Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Zhou Zhou suddenly opened his eyes. Found it. He said calmly before taking a step forward. The next second, he vanished. True God Rong Yan's domain intersected with the Sword Emperor's domain. Two terrifying true God-tier existences were fighting. One of them was a black-red lava giant that was more than 100,000 kilometers tall. It stood on the ground and held two lava hammers that were 50,000 to 60,000 meters long. It kept waving them in an attempt to hit Sword Emperor Fuyo, Lu Yin, who was flying around him. Die, Lu Yin! True God Rong Yin roared. It suddenly opened its mouth and spat out a stream of black-red lava that shot at Lu Yin, seeing that it could not hit the slippery sword immortal. Lu Yin controlled the mystic light heavenly magic sword to quickly fly into the distance, planning to avoid this shocking magma attack. However, no matter how fast he flew, the magma attack would always chase after him. When Lu Yin saw this, he immediately changed his strategy and snorted coldly. Then, he suddenly turned around and slashed out 18 chaotic sword chi with the mystic light heavenly mystic sword in his hand. The 18 chaotic sword energies flew into the air and quickly transformed into 18 majestic chaos divine dragons. They roared and charged at the magma pillar, quickly colliding with it. Boom! As soon as the two came into contact, a powerful explosion occurred. A seemingly substantial shock wave instantly fluctuated in all directions. But then, the 18 chaos divine dragons actually withstood the impact of the magma pillar and rushed towards the head of the true God Rong Yin. Flames flashed across true God Rong Yan's eyes. Lost skill, earth core true fire. He roared, and the magma pillar that he spewed out of his mouth suddenly emitted brilliant flames. Its power suddenly increased by several times. The 18 chaos divine dragons paused for a moment. Then, one of them suddenly shattered, leaving only 17 chaos divine dragons. Right on the heels of that, the second chaos divine dragon shattered, the third chaos divine dragon shattered, the fourth chaos divine dragon shattered. Soon, 8 chaos divine dragons shattered one after another. However, the interval between each chaos divine dragon's collapse was longer. After the 8th chaos divine dragon collapsed, no new chaos divine dragon continued to collapse. In the blink of an eye, Lu Yin had used the divine artifact below the true god tier, the mystic light heavenly mystic sword, to release the chaos divine dragon's attack. However, only half of it was left under the other party's counterattack. However, even this half of the chaos divine dragon was still resisting the true god tier Rong Yan's earth core true fire lava pillar. It was just that it could not continue to break through. A sword light flashed in Lu Yan's eyes. He held the mystic light heavenly sword and transformed into a chaotic sword beam that rushed into the 8 chaos divine dragons. Then, he led the 8 chaos divine dragons and broke through the lava pillar of the true god Rong Yin. Finally, he pierced through the other party's head and appeared behind him. True god Rong Yin froze on the spot. Beams of chaotic light appeared under his body. In the next second, billions of chaotic sword beams shot out from beneath his body. They actually tore the true god Rong Yan's divine body into pieces. He fell back powerlessly. The last thing he saw before he died was Zhou Zhou holding true god tier's head in the distance and quietly watching the battle from afar. Jingming, I can't accept this. This was the last thought that flashed through his mind before he lost all signs of life. In the sky, Patriarch Lu looked at the fallen true god Rong Yin in a daze. He killed a true god tier on the same level as me just like that? He muttered. Ever since he became a true god tier, he had only done this less than 3 times. One of them was when he saved by he with the Yellow Emperor. And this was the first time he had dealt with a powerful true god tier so cleanly and without suffering any injuries. He looked at the mystic light divine sword in his hand and gently stroked the other true god tier divine artifacts on his body. A smile appeared on his face. What an awesome true god tier divine artifacts! Patriarch Lu laughed out loud. Previously, he had 2 true god-tier divine artifacts that Zhou Zhou had lent him. At that time, his combat strength would be enough to crush him, who did not have a true god tier. He had 6 true god tier divine artifacts, and they were extremely compatible with him. Even though the current him was only a true god tier elementary grade, he was confident that he could defeat or even kill an intermediate true god tier powerhouse. He also had the guts to fight true god tier advanced grade experts. This was the confidence that the 6 true god-tier divine artifacts gave him. At that moment, he suddenly sensed something. He turned his head and saw Zhou Zhou and true god-tier's head in his hands. Patriarch Lu's eyes widened slightly. He immediately put away the corpse of the true god-tier Rong Yin and quickly soared in front of Zhou Zhou. "You dealt with true god-tier Jingming so quickly?" Patriarch Lu asked in surprise. "Yes." Zhou Zhou lifted true god Jingming's head and commented, "This guy is indeed the strongest true god tier of the Fire Cry race. If he continues to grow, he can at least advance to true god tier advanced grade in the future. It's not impossible for him to even advance to the master god tier level. Unfortunately, he encountered me and was destroyed by my palm," Zhou Zhou said regretfully. His original intention was to try to use words to incite the other party to incite defection. However, the other party would rather self-destruct his race's divine artifact than surrender, so Zhou Zhou had no choice but to deal with him. "Oh yes, I also got this from this guy." Zhou Zhou took out a crystal volcanic stone from the king's treasure box. Patriarch Lu looked over. Race divine artifact name, Fire Cry Origin Core. Divine Artifact Rank. Race Divine Artifact. Race Divine Artifact Ability 1. Source of Fire Cry. The exclusive Race Divine Artifact of the Fire Cry race. It was born in the body of the first life form of the Fire Cry race. It is the ultimate treasure of the Fire Cry race. Implanting it into the heart of any Fire Cry race member can raise the potential of the Fire Cry race to the level of a Master God Tier elementary grade. Race Divine Artifact Ability 2. King of Fire Cry. The Fire Cry race, who possesses this race's divine artifact, is publicly recognized as the King of Fire Cry. Race Divine Artifact Description. The Race Divine Artifact of the Fire Cry race. It is also the symbol of the Fire Cry race's king. With it, you will be the indisputable king of the Fire Cry race. Note, this race's divine artifact is exclusive to the Fire Cry race. It is only efficient on the Fire Cry race. Race Divine Artifact? Patriarch Lu was shocked. That's right. This true god Jingming still wants to harm me or escape by self-destructing this race's divine artifact. Unfortunately, not only did I stop it, I also seized this race's divine artifact, Zhou Zhou said nonchalantly. Patriarch Lu exhaled with emotion when he heard this. Good God. He forcefully snatched the race divine artifact from the hands of a true god-tier intermediate grade expert and even prevented the other party from self-destructing their race divine artifact. Normally, such a thing could only be done under circumstances where his power was completely overwhelming. Your Excellency, the common people's regal of our human race, has become stronger again. He exhaled inwardly. At the same time, he had a feeling. Maybe, before long, the human race would be able to walk out of the primordial world and live openly on the high continent again. Of course, he only thought about it and did not say it out loud. Then, Patriarch Lu thought of something and said in relief, no wonder the number of true gods in the Fire Cry race has always been so stable. The other races have fluctuated, but their number of true gods has never decreased. It turns out that they have a race divine artifact that can steadily provide super experts. Fortunately, you killed true god Jingming in time. Otherwise, if he really became a master god tier, no, even if he only advanced to the true god tier advanced grade, it would still be a huge threat to us humans. Zhou Zhou nodded. Other than Emperor Pangu, the other 4 true gods were either true god tier elementary grade or intermediate grade. There was no other expert above the true god tier. Once a second true god tier advanced grade expert appeared in the Fire Cry race when Imperial Lord Pangu was not around, the human race would really not be able to withstand it. Then, Patriarch Lu took one last look at the Fire Cry origin core before retracting his gaze. The Fire Cry origin core was good, but it could only be used by the Fire Cry clansmen. It had zero effect on the human race. To him, it could only be used as a collection. It had no practical use at all. Zhou Zhou smiled when he saw Patriarch Lu's nonchalant expression. He naturally wouldn't say anything about the Chaos Dao sacrificial cauldron, so he threw it into his king's treasure box. "Let's go and support the other true gods," Zhou Zhou asked. "Sure." Patriarch Lu happily agreed, and then searched for the location of the battle between the other true gods. Soon, he found the true god tier domain where the heavenly dragon god Kika and true god Xian Tong were fighting. After the two of them entered, they quickly discovered that this true god Xian Tong was being toyed with by Kika using spatial methods. After being toyed with 2 or 3 times, true god Xian Tong was so angry that he wanted to retaliate. However, he realized that he was like a clumsy, burly man and could not touch Kika at all. "I hate spatial true gods," True God Xian Tong roared. "Your new true body's combat methods are a little experienced," Patriarch Lu said in surprise. Even if true god tiers who cultivated the law of space were good at dodging attacks, they shouldn't be able to deal with enemies of the same level so easily. When Zhou Zhou heard this, he roughly explained the origins of Kika to Patriarch Lu. Anyway, there was nothing to hide. After hearing this, Patriarch Lu looked at Zhou Zhou enviously and said sourly, "You're too lucky. You can even pick up a true god-tier pet from an advanced kingdom." He, Sword Emperor Fuyo, had once traveled the myriad worlds and obtained many opportunities. He could be said to be the most knowledgeable true god in the human race. Even so, he had never encountered something as ridiculous as picking up a dragon true god-tier pet egg on his trip. It was all good luck. Only good luck? Zhou Zhou waved his hand. Then, the two of them didn't waste any time and immediately went to reinforce the heavenly dragon god, Kika. Under the joint attack of the 3 true gods, this true god Xian Tong quickly died with a final roar. Right on the heels of that, the 3 true gods went to rescue Gerald, who was fighting with true god Jihua. After joining forces to kill true god Jihua, the 4 of them came to the front of true god Jihua, who was fighting with Bai He. When true god Shenghua saw Zhou Zhou and company appear in front of him, he immediately said with an ugly expression, "Where are true god Jingming and company?" "Of course he's dead." "And what do you think this is?" Zhou Zhou said indifferently. Then, with a wave of his right hand, the huge corpses of the true gods of the Fire Cry race, Jingming, Rongyan, Xian Tong, and Jihua, appeared in front of him. Then, he took out the Fire Cry origin core and weighed it in his hand. He looked at the last true god of the Fire Cry race with a faint smile. "I'm willing to surrender. Can you spare my life?" After a moment of silence, true god Shenghua stared at the Fire Cry origin core in Zhou Zhou's hand and took a deep breath. "Surrender?" Zhou Zhou and the other true gods were stunned. When the first 4 true gods of the Fire Cry race faced their joint attack, they had never said anything like surrendering. Moreover, their resistance was extremely strong, and they had no intention of surrendering at all. Why did true god Shenghua yield so easily? Zhou Zhou did not think too much about it and directly asked the other party this question. "I don't have a sense of belonging to the Fire Cry race to begin with. Can't this be a reason to surrender?" True god Shenghua said frankly, "Back then, I wasn't from the Fire Cry race that was born here in the Crimson Fire domain. Instead, I was from a Fire Cry race that was born in a great sage volcano in the outside world. I'm extremely talented. I only used 15,000 years to become a true god. Later on, when I met the Crimson Fire domain, the Fire Cry race invited me to enter them and become one of their ancestors. I saw that they were sincere. Later on, they promised me that once I broke through to the true god-tier intermediate grade in the future, they would let me be the leader of the Fire Cry race. In addition, this was indeed the origin of the Fire Cry race, so I promised them that I would join the Blazing Sun clan and protect them until now." Who knew? True god Shenghua gritted his teeth and said, "Ever since true god Jingming rose to prominence, these old farts of the Fire Cry race have forgotten about me in the blink of an eye. These fellows had already treated true god Jingming as their future clan leader before he progressed to true god tier intermediate grade. After he became a true god tier intermediate grade powerhouse, they pushed him to the position of clan leader the following year. As for my opinions and thoughts, they didn't even ask. I'm an outsider in their eyes after all. True God Manhwa said with a bitter smile. Patriarch Liu and the others looked at each other. In the end, Zhou Zhou said, "It's fine if you want to surrender. Apply to enter the Blazing Sun Kingdom and become this king's subject now." Okay. True God Manhwa nodded. Then, he took a deep breath and said, "I, Manhwa Tubazanlai, true god of volcano and sacred fire, request to enter the Blazing Sun Kingdom and become a subject of the common people's regal." As soon as he finished speaking, the unwillingness and shame in the depths of his eyes quietly dissipated, replaced by loyalty and fanaticism. Peaceful Time's strength was still stable. "From now on, you will be my subject and the true god of the Blazing Sun Kingdom." Zhou Zhou uttered with a smile. "Thank you, Your Majesty." True God Manhwa uttered respectfully. Zhou Zhou smiled and nodded. From then on, he had another true god under him. His Blazing Sun Kingdom already had 3 true god-tier experts. Coupled with his special true god-tier combat power, there were a total of 4 true god-tier experts. If Elizariel, who had spent countless years pursuing the Elven Empire to advance to the Divine Kingdom, heard this, she would probably die of envy. Congratulations. Congratulations to the Blazing Sun Kingdom for having another true god-tier expert. Another colleague, haha. The divine beings of the human race did not expect that the Blazing Sun Kingdom would have another true god-tier expert in the blink of an eye. Furthermore, it seemed that this true god-tier expert was about to advance to true god-tier intermediate grade. When they came back to their senses, Bai He and Patriarch Liu were both happy and envious. Zhou Zhou smiled. At this moment, true god Manhwa flew in front of the true gods. When the other true gods saw him coming over, even though they did not seem to reject him on the surface, they were still a little wary. Only Zhou Zhou looked at true god Manhwa with a smile. He didn't seem to be wary at all. "Greetings, Your Majesty." "Greetings, true gods." True god Manhwa respected Zhou Zhou from the bottom of his heart, but he was very humble to the other true gods. "Welcome, true god Manhwa, to the Blazing Sun Kingdom. We can communicate more in the future." The true god tiers smiled and nodded. True god Manhwa replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. "True god Manhwa," Zhou Zhou said, "let's watch this genocide with me and the other gods." "Yes, Your Majesty." True god Manhwa nodded respectfully. Then, he walked behind Zhou Zhou and looked down at the battlefield with a calm expression. "True god Manhwa, don't you want to plead for your clansmen?" Zhou Zhou suddenly said after watching for a while. "I'm a surrendered subject of the sinful country. I dare not make any more requests." True god Manhwa said respectfully. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly and said, "Don't worry. Even though I have ordered the extermination of your clan, I will still leave behind the Fire Cry race members who are willing to surrender and continue living in the Crimson Fire domain. It's just that their name is no longer the Fire Cry race, but the Fire Cry human race." True God Manhwa fell silent. The history of the Fire Cry race was broken with this one sentence. From then on, the Fire Cry race disappeared, and the Fire Cry human race became a branch race of the human race. However, it was better to have their spine broken than to lose their life. Becoming a branch race was better than not existing in the forest of thousands of races. At this moment, Zhou Zhou did another shocking thing. "After I completely take down the territory of the Fire Cry race, this area and the Fire Cry race will be handed over to you to manage." After he finished speaking, he extended his right hand, and the Fire Cry origin core appeared in his hand. He looked at the Fire Cry origin core and threw it at True God Manhwa without hesitation. This action immediately stunned the gods. Even True God Manhwa was taken aback. He hurriedly caught the divine artifact and looked at Zhou Zhou in bewilderment. "I'll leave this race divine artifact, Fire Cry origin core, to you." This will also make it easier for you to rule the Crimson Fire Domain's Fire Cry human race. Zhou Zhou asked, Your Majesty, this is a race divine artifact? Are you really willing to give it to me? True God Shanghua said excitedly after regaining his senses. This was a race divine artifact that was even more precious than true God-tier divine artifacts. He naturally knew the effects of this race's divine artifact, especially since he was once the candidate for the patriarch of the Fire Cry race. With it there was still a glimmer of hope for it to advance to the true God-tier advanced grade, or even the Master God-tier level, and become a super expert that could suppress a race. Moreover, this race divine artifact could allow him to become the king of the Fire Cry clan that he had always been looking forward to. Moreover, it was undoubtedly the king of the Fire Cry clan. His Majesty could be said to have given him what he wanted the most. How could he not be excited? There you go. Perform well in the future. Remember, if I can give it to you, I can naturally take it back easily. Zhou Zhou said calmly. It was just a racial divine artifact that was not very useful. Wasn't it just the ability to bestow a life form Master God-tier elementary grade potential and the ability to become the king of the Fire Cry race? It wasn't like his territory didn't have talents with Master God-tier potential. As for the effect of becoming the king of the Fire Cry race, Zhou Zhou, who had the Lord talent of the peaceful times, looked down on it even more. In addition, the Chaos Dao sacrificial cauldron only had 5 times left to transform the people of foreign races into divine artifacts. Zhou Zhou did not want to use the precious transformation times on this useless divine artifact. Since that was the case, why not hand it over to true God Shenghua? In any case, the other party was already affected by his Lord talent. It was almost impossible for him to betray him in the future. If he wanted to get it back in the future, he could just get it back. I will not let you down, Your Majesty. True God Shanghua excitedly performed the highest etiquette of the Fire Cry race to Zhou Zhou, expressing his supreme reverence for Zhou Zhou. The next second, a text notification appeared in front of Zhou Zhou. The loyalty of your subject, Sacred Fire Tubas Anlai, true God tier of the volcano and Sacred Fire, has been raised to 100. He has become your fanatic believer. Zhou Zhou was stunned. He became a fanatic believer so quickly? He looked thoughtfully at true God Shenghua, who held the Fire Cry origin core in his hand, as if he had obtained a treasure. It seemed like this newly joined true God Shenghua had a strong obsession with this race divine artifact. Otherwise, with the true God tier's willpower, even if he hadn't reached the will-like light realm, he wouldn't have become another God spirit's fanatic believer so easily. His act of gifting the other party's race divine artifact must have touched the depths of the other party's heart to achieve such an effect. Your Majesty, with this Fire Cry origin core, I'm confident that all the Fire Cry race, no, all the Fire Cry human race will surrender and become your subject, Your Majesty. Actually, the Fire Cry race lost the name of their race and became a vassal of your race, Your Majesty. In the eyes of the outside world, this situation is equivalent to the extermination of their race. These living Fire Cry human race should be of greater use to His Majesty. True God Shanghua suddenly said seriously. Then go and try. Zhou Zhou raised his eyebrows. After some thought, he decided to let the other party give it a try. He originally did not plan to slaughter all of the Fire Cry race. The suggestions provided by the other party not only showed that he and the human race were not to be trifled with, it also added a large number of subjects to his kingdom. It was beneficial but harmless. Why not give it a try? Yes, Your Majesty. True God Shanghua nodded solemnly. Then, with the Fire Cry origin core in hand, he forcefully stuffed this racial divine artifact into his heart. Immediately after, his divine body suddenly shook as wisps of fire appeared on his body. Soon after, a bright red ancient volcano mark slowly appeared on his forehead. Everyone could feel it. True God Shanghua didn't seem to have changed much on the surface, but his aura seemed to have undergone an extremely deep transformation. This made him look also more extraordinary. Zhou Zhou had only seen such a feeling on Xiaoxian, Nazario, Geralt, Tathagata, and the others. They were all possessors of master god tier potential without exception. The other true god tiers couldn't help but look at him in surprise and envy, especially Patriarch Liu and Bai He. This was a future master god tier seed. There were only a few humans with the potential of a master god tier, looking at the entire human race. The most famous among them was naturally their imperial lord Pangu. With the help of Zhou Zhou, the common people's regal who had created countless miracles, it was very likely that he would reach the same level of strength as imperial lord Pangu in the future. A moment later, true deity Shanghua had just woken up from the deep transformation of his divine body that the fire cry origin core had given him. Is this what Jingming felt like? No wonder he broke through to true god tier intermediate grade in such a short period of time. I, Shanghua, can do it too now. True deity Shanghua was extremely excited. However, he naturally didn't forget what he had to do. He bowed respectfully to Zhou Zhou and said, "I'll be back soon." Then, he flew straight in favor of the ancestral fire holy capital. It seems like this true deity Shanghua still has some feelings in favor of his clansmen. Of course, I can't rule out the possibility that he wants to manage more fire cry human race in the future. Haha, that's human nature. Bai He and the others discussed via voice transmission. True deity Shanghua's act of protecting his clansmen wasn't that repulsive. In any case, he had already become a member of the fire cry human race. In the future, he could be considered one of them. Even though Zhou Zhou heard their conversation, he performed not interrupt and only watched the scene quietly. The ancestral fire holy capital was the clan capital of the fire cry race. It was also the supreme holy land of the fire cry race. Legendary tier's first fire cry race member, Lao, was born in the ancestral volcano under the ground of the ancestral fire holy capital. At this moment, this ancestral fire holy had already been surrounded by the soldiers of the four great armies of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. No matter how many soldiers and residents emerged from the ancestral fire holy capital, they were still unable to stop the advance of the soldiers of the Blazing Sun Kingdom in the face of the absolute difference in strength. The soldiers of the Blazing Sun Kingdom were getting closer and closer to the holy capital. Many fire cry race god spirits, heroes, soldiers, and ordinary fire cry race members began to collapse. Is our fire cry race really going to be exterminated today? Why are 800 trillion members of the fire cry clan no different from ants in front of that true god tier? We can't block it. Not at all. The difference is too great. The fire cry race was in despair. As for the descendant of the ancestral fire king, Lao Yi, who was guarding the ancestral fire holy capital, he was also sitting on the throne and looking at his ministers in despair. Everyone, 4 of our 5 ancestors have already extinguished their vital flames. Only the vital flames of ancestor Shanghua is still struggling to hold on, but they shouldn't be able to hold on for long. Ministers, do you still have a way to save the clan? The future of extermination is right in front of us. We can't just do nothing. He sought a way to escape from the ministers he relied on. However, these ministers looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Your Majesty, the difference in strength between us is too great. If we're given a little more time to reach an alliance agreement with the other races that have been persuaded to surrender, we can still fight with that common people's regal. At that time, we should be able to protect our fire cry race. But the other party came too quickly. The diplomats of the Blood Moon clan haven't even left the holy capital with our alliance agreement and are already stuck here. There's nothing we can do now. A fire cry race official said with difficulty. That's right, that's right. Where's the Blood Moon clan's diplomatic envoy? Quickly summon it over and ask the Blood Moon clan if they have any solutions. The ancestral fire king, Lao Yi, seemed to have found a life-saving straw when he heard this and hurriedly called out. Your Excellency, the ancestral fire king. A beautiful Blood Moon clan member who looked like a fox or a wolf with a blood-colored full moon between her eyebrows and smooth silver hair all over her body walked into the hall. He stopped in his tracks and said respectfully, I've already sent a request for help to the outside world, but the blazing Sun Kingdom seems to have set up an isolation barrier to prevent communication. My news can't be sent out at all. I also used other methods to send messages, including sending my subordinates to deliver letters, but without exception, they all failed. According to my subordinates, as soon as they were 100,000 kilometers away from the ancestral fire holy capital, they were affected by an invisible restriction. They couldn't move quickly or use spatial methods to leave. This method reminds me of something. It's said that the common people's regal has a true god imprisonment divine artifact called the demonic abyss spiderweb. Once spread out, everything within a radius of 1,000,000 kilometers will be imprisoned. God spirits will not be able to resist at all. Even true gods will be affected. We should be imprisoned in the crimson fire domain by the demonic abyss spiderweb now. In the current situation, unless a true god-tier intermediate grade or stronger existence appears and breaks the restraints of the demonic abyss spiderweb, it will be very difficult to resolve the current predicament. The Blood Moon diplomatic envoy, Lang Yin, said. The ministers and the ancestral Fire King felt even more despair when they heard this. A true god-tier divine artifact for imprisonment? And one had to be at true god-tier intermediate grade or above to crack them. The vital fire of their true god-tier ancestor, true god Jingming, had long been extinguished. Only a true god Shenghua, who was of true god-tier elementary grade, was still alive. Even if this ancestor Shenghua was lucky enough to come back alive, there was no way to save them. Thick spatial power erupted, forming a spatial passageway with endless suction behind it, directly sucking it into the spatial rift. Lang Yin said bold words with a calm expression. Your Majesty, the common people's regal's extermination is already unstoppable. If your Majesty still wants to preserve the last bit of dignity of the Fire Cry race, it's better to commit suicide now, so that you won't fall into the hands of that common people's regal and be bullied by him. Lang Yin said bold words with a calm expression. Your Majesty, the common people's regal's extermination is already unstoppable. If your Majesty still wants to preserve the last bit of dignity of the Fire Cry race, it's better to commit suicide now, so that you won't fall into the hands of that common people's regal and be bullied by him. When the time comes, don't say that the common people's regal wants to destroy your clan. Our alliance won't let you off either. Some of the upper echelons of the races in our alliance know that the Fire Cry race has some small race bases outside the Crimson Fire domain. If you commit suicide now, the Fire Cry race will still be able to protect the Fire Cry race members outside the Crimson Fire domain. You don't want the race left behind by your ancestors to really be wiped out, do you? Lang Yin smiled. I. The magma on the ancestral Fire King's body became unstable. Even though he was the ancestral Fire King, he had only been pushed to this position because of his bloodline. He did not have any ability or courage to speak of. Even his position as a low-tier deity-level elementary grade god was forcefully accumulated by the true god ancestors after spending a lot of resources. It was also because of this that he, the ancestral Fire King, actually didn't have much real power. The symbolism was greater than the actual meaning. He immediately panicked, faced with the danger to his life, race, and ancestors' reputation. What should I do? Do I really have to kill myself? But I don't want to die. The ancestral Fire King felt that his mind was in a mess. At this moment, a familiar voice resounded in the world. All the members of the Fire Cry race heard this voice. My citizens of the Fire Cry race, I am true God Shenghua Tuba Zanlai. Raise your heads and look at me. True God Shenghua? It's the ancestor true God Shenghua. Ancestor true God Shenghua is not dead. This voice seemed to have a magical power. All the Fire Cry clansmen who heard true God Shenghua's words revealed infatuated expressions. They looked up and saw the majestic and amiable figure in the sky. The throbbing of their blood made them instantly feel that the other party was the most important relative in their lives. Right at this moment, true God Shenghua spoke again. From today onwards, I, true God Shenghua, will become the main branch of the Lao and become the current Fire Cry race. You can call me the master of the sacred fire. Greetings, master of the sacred fire. Hundreds of Fire Cry race members shouted in unison without hesitation. When true God Shenghua heard their voices and saw this scene, his body began to tremble. He had waited for too long for this moment. He appeased his excitement and forced him to calm down. I hereby announce the first Fire Cry Sacred Order. From now on, the Fire Cry race will be renamed the Fire Cry Human Race. It will be a branch of the Blazing Sun Kingdom's human race and will be ruled by the King of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, common people's regal, Zhou Zhou. Those who share the same bloodline as me shall obey this order. This order will never change. I hope our clansmen will remember it. Now, put down your resistance and welcome the Holy Army into the Holy Capital. Splash. At this moment, most of the Fire Cry clansmen put down their weapons and stopped resisting. They took the initiative to open up a path for the Blazing Sun Kingdom soldiers, who had astonished expressions, to enter the ancestral Fire Holy Capital. Welcome to the Holy Capital, they shouted. As for the opinions and actions of the few talented and extraordinary members of the Fire Clan who could barely maintain their own thoughts, they were no longer important in the face of the general trend of the race. High up in the sky, the Fire Cry race will really become history after today. In its place is the Fire Cry human race of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Zhou Zhou smiled and the other true gods also smiled and nodded. What's going on? Many unaffected members of the Fire Cry race said in shock and anger. I feel like my thoughts and will have been forcefully altered. Another high-tier deity-level member of the Fire Cry clan held his head in pain and struggled to speak. Could that be because of the legendary supreme treasure of our Fire Cry race? It's said that no matter which member of the Fire Cry race obtains the supreme treasure of our race, who can become the king of our Fire Cry race. The current situation seems to only be explained by this legendary tier. Another high-tier deity level said with an ugly expression. At this moment, a high-tier deity level advanced grade Fire Cry race god spirit spoke. He was called Yinzei. He was a true god tier seed publicly acknowledged by the Fire Cry race. At the same time, he was also the eldest disciple of true God Jihua. At this moment, he looked at true God Shenghua, who was surrounded by the entire race. He suddenly took a deep breath and said, "My teacher once told me about the supreme treasure. If it's really that supreme treasure, be it in name or in reality, he would already be recognized as the king of the Fire Cry race by our Fire Cry race. No, he should be the king of the Fire Cry human race." My fellow clansmen. Yinzei looked at the surrounding Fire Cry race and said, "The enemy is powerful and has killed almost all the true god tiers on our side. Now, more than half of the ordinary members of the Fire Cry race have defected to the enemy. The race foundation that we treat as our trump card is so laughable in front of the absolute difference in strength. The scales of victory have completely tilted towards each other. Yinzei really can't see any hope of winning or even surviving now. If that's the case, why don't we stay and surrender together?" As soon as these words were spoken, most of the unaffected Fire Cry race around him looked at he in shock. A small number of them had flickering expressions, clearly tempted. Yinzei was already prepared to be scolded. However, he didn't regret it. As a true god-tier seed, he really didn't want to die in a war that was certain death before he became a true god tier. He had yet to experience the power of a true god tier. How could he be willing to die without a name? That would not be worth it. Therefore, he did not hesitate to suggest a way to surrender. In the end, seeing the current situation, it turned out that many of his clansmen did not want to die. He immediately relaxed and began to intensify his efforts to persuade the other clansmen to surrender with him. Hence, more and more of his clansmen were convinced by him, a true god-tier seed. Not long after, he convinced more than 30,000 top-notch members of the Fire Cry clan. Then, they bowed respectfully to true god Shenghua and Zhou Zhou in the sky. It was not uncommon for the Fire Cry tribe to have a change in attitude like Yinzei. To put it simply, he was resigned to his fate. It was the same for everyone after all. It could be tolerated even if this was wrong. Of course, There were also the effects of unwillingness to submit and racial divine artifacts. They still wanted to violently resist the rule of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Zhou Zhou's yellow talisman Dao soldiers and violent storm spirit were not for nothing. 3 words. Destroy them all. Zhou Zhou fell into deep thought upon seeing this scene. It seemed that racial divine artifacts were not invincible. If they encountered a stronger life form's will, power, laws, or other existences, there was still a possibility of them being weakened or even immune. Come on. The Fire Cry race has already been exterminated. Let's go meet our new human branch. Zhou Zhou did not think too much about it and turned to Bai He and the other true gods. The true gods smiled and nodded. Then, they flew towards the ancestral fire holy capital together. True God Shenghua stood in the main hall of the ancestral fire holy capital. His eyes closed as he enjoyed the cheers of the millions of fire cry human race cultivators from all directions. The master of the sacred fire is eternal. The fire cry human race is eternal. That's what I want. True God Shenghua thought to himself. The position of the Fire Cry race patriarch and the divine artifacts of the Fire Cry race were finally in his hands. Even though it was a little different from the way he had thought of obtaining it previously, that was no longer important. When he thought about everything he had, True God Shenghua felt equal more grateful to his majesty. At this moment, he suddenly sensed something and immediately looked up into the distance. He saw Zhou Zhou and the other true god tiers flying towards he. Welcome, your majesty. True God Shenghua immediately gave up the ancestral Fire King's throne behind him and knelt beside him. Welcome, your majesty, common people's regal. The god spirits who had surrendered also saw the true god-tier god spirits of Zhou Zhou. They were very discerning and hurriedly conveyed the news and orders to the Fire Cry human race outside. Welcome, your majesty common people's regal. Welcome, your majesty common people's regal. Welcome, your majesty common people's regal. What kind of scene would it be when hundreds of trillions of Fire Cry human race cheered in unison? At this moment, Zhou Zhou and the other true god tier felt as if the sky of the Crimson Fire domain was about to be torn apart by these guys' voices. They disappeared into the sky in a flash. The next second, Zhou Zhou and the other true gods instantly appeared in front of true god Shenghua. Get up. You've made a great contribution in this battle. I'll reward you when we get back. Zhou Zhou patted true god Shenghua's shoulder with a smile. True god Shenghua was quite interesting. He had specially transformed into a human form as if to cater to him. He looked like a magma man, to which Zhou Zhou only had one pondered in his mind. Such a bootlicker. I don't dare to take credit. I'm only borrowing the power of the race's divine artifact. True God Shenghua said respectfully. Zhou Zhou smiled and did not say anything. He walked straight to the throne behind him and sat on it. He had the rare appearance of a regal because he had every kinds of temperament enhancements. True God Shenghua and the other true god tiers couldn't help but hold their breaths the moment he sat down. At this moment, a pondered involuntarily appeared in their minds. The image and temperament of the legendary lord of all races were just SOSO, right? It was the same for true gods, what more the ordinary Fire Cry human race. At this moment, because of true God Shenghua's words, they had automatically become subjects of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Under the combined influence of the Lord Talon of the Peaceful Times and Zhou Zhou's own temperament and image, they watched at Zhou Zhou as if they were gazing at their own god spirit. I declare in the name of the common people's regal, from now on, the territory of the Crimson Fire Domain's Fire Cry human race is the Blazing Sun Kingdom's territory. The people of the Crimson Fire Domain's Fire Cry human race are the subjects of the Blazing Sun Kingdom and are also my subjects. Immortal Regal, the glory of our king's ancestral fire will be passed down for eternity. My ruler is the first flame. The first flame is my king. All the members of the Fire Cry race were spirited and fanatical. True God Shenghua was a little envious of this scene. He touched the racial divine artifact at his heart. It was an effect that he could only create by relying on his race's divine artifact. How could His Majesty achieve it with just 2 or 3 sentences? The effect even felt better than a race's divine artifact. Looking at the fanatical expressions of the fire cry human race, he was probably already His Majesty's true believer. They might even become devout believers, or even fanatic believers of His Majesty in no time. So this is the common people's regal? True God Shenghua thought in awe. At the same time, he became even more loyal and fanatical towards Zhou Zhou. True God Shenghua. Zhou Zhou said, "Yes, Your Majesty." Shenghua said respectfully, "Summarize the subjects, troops, territories, wealth, divine artifacts, and all other valuable things in the Fire Cry race's territory and make a list. Then, hand this list to this king." Zhou Zhou ordered. This was the first time Zhou Zhou had led his subordinates to destroy a racial-level faction. He was looking forward to how rich his spoils of war would be. "Yes, Your Majesty." True God Shenghua replied without hesitation. Zhou Zhou acknowledged. When Patriarch Lu and Baihe saw this scene, they suddenly looked at each other and could not help but laugh. This trip was really easy. He had only fought with a true god tier and watched such a good show. Then, he had obtained a high-tier deity-level divine artifact and borrowed a full set of true god-tier divine artifacts. They had never seen such a huge deal in their lives. Today was the first time. As expected, he could earn a lot even if he only ate some soup by following Zhou Zhou's side. At the same time, Zhou Zhou looked at the hundreds of Fire Cry human race members in front of him who were looking at him respectfully and fanatically. He was very satisfied. The Lord Talent of the peaceful times was indeed the more subjects there were, the more shocking the effect. There were hundreds of trillion members of the Fire Cry race. If other lords suddenly obtained so many clansmen, even if they were powerful enough to suppress these newly surrendered Fire Cry human race, they would probably be afraid and not dare to use these new subjects lightly, not to mention using their native true god to manage them. However, Zhou Zhou dared. Not only did he dare to interfere, he even planned to give these new Fire Cry human race subjects the same status and treatment as the Blazing Sun Kingdom subjects in the future. Still, giving the Fire Cry human race subjects the same status and treatment is a little difficult. I'll have to take my time. There are hundreds of trillions of Fire Cry human race members after all. How many resources do I have to invest to allow these Fire Cry human race members to have the same status and treatment as the other Blazing Sun Kingdom subjects? However, once I do this, these hundreds of fiery clan members will provide me with at least 200 trillion extraordinary tier professionals. Zhou Zhou thought to himself. Once such a large number of extraordinary tier professionals were realized, Zhou Zhou would even dare to fight head-on with a high-level bloodline race. However, it was destined to be extremely difficult to achieve this. Fortunately, Zhou Zhou had time. Zhou Zhou could afford to wait no matter how long the return period of this investment was before he could reap the benefits. In any case, he was almost invincible on the High Continent. As long as he didn't leave the High Continent, those top-notch bloodline races that hated him to the core wouldn't be able to do anything to him. At this moment, Wu Tu walked over and whispered a few words into his ear. Zhou Zhou's expression remained unchanged as he transmitted a few words to Baihe and Patriarch Lu. Uriel led 10 true god-tier experts from the people of foreign races over. Their target should be you. Retreat first. Even though Patriarch Lu and Baihe did not reveal any strange expressions on their faces, their hearts sank. They had only come out for a short while, but Uriel had already detected them and tracked them down. Was this guy born with a dog's nose? The two of them did not dare to be negligent. Just as they were about to leave, they heard Zhou Zhou send another voice transmission. "If you go back now, I'm afraid there will be some danger on the way. I'll give you a ride." Zhou Zhou raised his hand and pointed at them as soon as he finished speaking. "Lord Talent, return to the city activated." The next second, Baihe and Zhou Zhou disappeared. The Blazing Sun Kingdom, in front of the Night Temple. Baihe and Patriarch Lu's divine bodies suddenly appeared here. The two of them looked at the door of the Night Temple and the guards on both sides of the door in a daze. He quickly came back to his senses, and a smile appeared on his face. I didn't expect Zhou Zhou to have such a trick up his sleeve. Let's go, Patriarch Lu. After walking through the door of the Holy Temple and passing through an ultra-long distance cross-border teleportation corridor, we can directly return to the primordial world. Patriarch Lu nodded and walked into the Night Temple with White River. From the beginning to the end, the two guards guarding the door of the sacred hall had never realized that the two true god-tier existences had already passed them and walked into the hall. The ancestral fire holy capital. Zhou Zhou, who was sitting on the ancestral fire throne, opened his eyes. He looked up at the sky. True god-tier Uriel and the 10 true god-tier advanced grade people of foreign races standing behind him were standing high in the sky, looking down at him coldly. Your Excellency Uriel, I didn't expect to meet you so soon. What can I do for you? The true god-tier Uriel and the 10 true god-tier advanced grade people of foreign races standing behind were standing high in the sky, looking down at him coldly. Common people's regal, let me ask you, where is Sword Emperor Fuyo of the human race, Lu Yin, and the god of abyssal nights, Bai He? Uriel asked coldly. You mean those two seniors of the human race? Zhou Zhou gazed enlightened. Then, he shook his head and said regretfully, You guys came at the wrong time. Those two just left. You dare to protect a human felon and stay with the human race felon? I suspect that you're colluding with the human race. I want to lock you up and force out the whereabouts of the human race from you. Uriel intimidated Zhou Zhou. He said it very ruthlessly, but he did not take action. A human race felon? May I ask what crimes the human tribe has committed? Zhou Zhou asked curiously. There was once a human who secretly slandered the Titan gods and offended the might of the Titan gods. After the Titan gods heard this news, the 6th elder of our tribe specially instructed me to send troops to attack the human race. He additionally questioned me to ensure that the human race in the High Continent is wiped out, especially those true god-tier humans. Common people's regal, on account of your difficult growth, quickly tell me the location of the human race. Otherwise, you will commit the crime of covering up for him. Your future will be extremely miserable, Uriel said majestically. Zhou Zhou did not say anything on the surface, but he was sneering in his heart. What a baseless accusation. Just one slander in the dark and an entire tribe would be exterminated. Your Excellency Uriel has misunderstood. How would I dare to cover up for an important criminal that the Titans need? We're just a simple employment relationship. When this relationship ends, they will naturally leave, but it has nothing to do with covering up. If you don't believe me, you can attack and try. Zhou Zhou probed. Upon hearing this, Uriel immediately gazed like he had eaten *T. The sky gradually darkened. Uriel and the others left anyway. Uriel and the rest did not dare to take the risk regardless of whether Zhou Zhou was telling the truth or not. Zhou Zhou chuckled when he saw this. Return to court victorious. He shouted loudly and then returned to the blazing Sun Kingdom with all the loots. At the same time, just as Zhou Zhou led the army back to the blazing Sun Kingdom, the news of the Fire Cry race being exterminated had also spread around. In particular, the advanced races and civilizations all had their own unique and fast communication methods. In addition, they themselves paid a lot of attention to the special lord of all races, the common people's regal, Zhou Zhou. Therefore, not long after, all the lords of all races and civilizations in the Supreme Continent and the endless heavens who were paying attention to Zhou Zhou found out that Zhou Zhou had led an army to exterminate the Fire Cry race. All the factions fell silent after receiving this news. The inside story revealed by this news was so shocking that they almost thought that they had heard wrongly. Nearly 100 billion soldiers, 2,000 god-tier army spirits, hundreds of god spirit-level experts, 5 true god tiers were helping. Was this really the combat power of an advanced Kingdom Lord faction, and not the total combat power of a beginner Divine Kingdom Lord faction? How did this kid develop so quickly? If he continues to develop like this, by the time he leaves the High Continent, he won't already be a Divine Kingdom Lord, right? What's that idiot Uriel doing? Why is he so useless after going to the high continent for so long? What a piece of trash. The common people's regal is invincible with the supreme agreement. We can only wait now. I've already contacted a super expert. When the time comes, as long as common people's regal dares to leave the high continent, I guarantee that he will never return. The common people's regal is really a huge threat to us. The experts of the various races and factions increasingly felt that Zhou Zhou was a huge threat. However, in the face of the supreme agreement, they felt helpless against the current Zhou Zhou. In the central region of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, in the divine world space, the reincarnation temple, Zhou Zhou opened his eyes and received the memories of possessing Zhou One's will. He quickly learned everything about this battle. A true god tier of the Fire Cry race actually surrendered, causing the extermination process to speed up so much. But it's a good thing. A smile appeared on his face. After this battle, those people of foreign races who coveted the humans and themselves would be wary if they wanted to attack the humans or them themselves. He had already established his persona after all. Whoever dared to exterminate the human race that he was in, he would personally lead an army to the race's territory to exterminate his race. Under such a threat, those races and forces that felt that their strength was inferior to the Blazing Sun Kingdom would generally not dare to easily invade again. Only those races and factions that felt that they were stronger than Zhou Zhou and were not afraid of Zhou Zhou's threat of extermination would dare to take the risk of exterminating their race to find trouble with the Blazing Sun Kingdom. It'd be nice to reduce some of the fly's harassment. At this thought, Zhou Zhou nodded slightly in his heart. In addition, this persona had only been established for the first time, and it was not very stable. In order to completely stabilize this ruthless character's image, he could not stop his extermination. Those races that did not accept his persuasion had to be exterminated one by one. Furthermore, after this battle, I realized that I seemed to have underestimated the soldiers under my command. Let's not talk about the violent storm spirit for now. Tonight, I will change my profession to an Empire-level long-range soldier type, Forbidden Mage. As an Empire-level close combat soldier type, the Yellow Talisman Dao soldiers can be considered a terrifying existence in the current war, especially in the Annihilation War. Ordinary life forms without extraordinary tier power can't resist such a terrifying Empire-level soldier type at all. They can't even expend the recovery ability of the Yellow Talisman Dao soldiers. Even if we true god tiers don't take action, my tens of billions of Yellow Talisman Dao soldiers can probably complete the extermination mission on their own. It'll just take more time. Zhou Zhou thought. At this moment, Aaliyah's voice came from outside. Your Majesty. Bai Yun and the generals request an audience. Let them in. Zhou Zhou asked. Yes, Your Majesty. Aaliyah said respectfully. Soon, she saw Bai Yun and the others coming over. Greetings, Your Majesty. The generals, heroes, and god spirits uttered respectfully. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly. Your Majesty, this is a summary by Lady Wanya. It's a list of the wars of today. After Bai Yun finished speaking, she pointed with her finger and an illusory projection appeared in front of everyone. Zhou Zhou looked at it. This morning, Bai Yun and the other soldiers and god spirits specialized in hunting down the Eye of the Heaven's anger. They hunted down a total of 30 god spirits and killed more than 50 million fog monsters along the way. In the afternoon, he went to the Fire Cry race. In this short afternoon, he eliminated more than 13 trillion Fire Cry race members, more than 3.2 billion Fire Cry race soldiers, and 131.2 million Fire Cry race god spirits. The war supplies left behind by these enemies, the racial reserves of the Fire Cry race, and their combat items were enhanced by the title of King of Loots and the Strongest Lord. They obtained a total of more than 2,010 million legendary tier mist cores, more than 20,188 million epic tier mist cores, more than 156,055 million extraordinary tier mist cores, 256,445 million diamond tier mist cores, 280 billion and 14 million white platinum tier mist cores, 359,140,000,000 yellow gold tier mist cores, 5 trillion white silver tier mist cores, 10.8 trillion green bronze tier mist cores, 568 million black iron tier mist cores. There were more than 5 trillion skill books and 4 trillion pieces of equipment. The basic materials were about 150 trillion units. More than 20 billion 15 million units of basic elemental gemstone resources. More than 510 million units of thunder element gems. 510,000 units of life elemental gems. 630 million units of death elemental gems. More than 10 million units of time elemental gems. More than 15 million units of space elemental gems. 26 billion 88 million origin crystals. 1, 0, 12, 500, 1850 green bronze tier lord talent crystal fragments. 11,523 holy spirit tier faith divine crystals. More than 2 billion 50 million units of divine crystals from low tier to high tier deity level. 500 true god tier elementary grade divine crystals. More than 6 million low tier to high tier deity level divine artifacts. 24 true god tier divine artifacts. There were also more than 12 million divine spark fragments, god tier medicinal herbs, god tier ingredients, god tier ores, god tier blueprints, and other treasures. The 312 Fire Cry Race God Spirit's intrinsic treasure, Volcano. The intrinsic treasure of the 4 Fire Cry Race true God tiers, Volcano. Zhou Zhou couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder after reading this part of the summary. Even though they had eliminated so many Fire Cry Race today, as ordinary God Spirits who did not have extraordinary tier powers, they would not be able to drop any items after being killed. Therefore, only the 2 billion Fire Cry Race soldiers and the Fire Cry Race God Spirits that they had killed today could drop loots in this annihilation battle. Even so, he had also obtained much more spoils of war than yesterday. The reason was that they had also taken away the reserve materials of the Fire Cry Race. If not for the fact that they did not have the replenishment of the reserve materials of the Fire Cry Race, the advantages of their battle today would have been reduced by at least 20 times. The God Spirit level loots of mid-tier deity level and above had increased quite a bit. They had killed hundreds of Fire Cry Race God Spirits today after all. They naturally did not lack spoils of war for mid-tier deity level and high-tier deity level God Spirits. On the other hand, there were much fewer low-tier deity level loots. That was because the Fire Cry Race did not have that many legendary tier experts for them to destroy. Naturally, they would not drop many low-tier deity level loots. As for the life elemental gems and death elemental gems, they provided he with a total of more than 1.1 billion. He should be able to meet the requirements for the territory's advancement after experiencing a war of 10 billion levels. The number of time elemental gems and space elemental gems also satisfied him. He just did not know how long it would take to level up after the legendary tier elementary grade territory. As for the final volcanoes, they were the foundation of the Fire Cry Race's life. It was equivalent to the divine spark of the Fire Cry Race, as well as the intrinsic divine artifact of the Fire Cry Race. It also had the effect of assisting the God Spirits of the Fire Cry Race to use their domains. It was said that these intrinsic volcanoes were extremely useful to the juniors of the Fire Cry Race. It was even said that they could reconstruct the foundation potential of the Fire Cry Race and make their foundation potential stronger. It was almost equivalent to the combination effect of the Book of the God Spirit and the Potential Advancement Potion. Zhou Zhou was not interested in these exclusive treasures of the Fire Cry Race. He casually threw them into the military merit exchange system and set a reasonable price for the Fire Cry Race to exchange for in the future. Then, Zhou Zhou looked at the God Spirit list and the military strength list. He first looked at the list of God Spirits. Today, true God Manhwa had used his race divine artifact, the Fire Cry Origin Core, to make a total of 396 Fire Cry Race God Spirits surrender. Even though most of them were lesser gods, there were still more than 50 mid-tier deity-level God Spirits and 16 high-tier deity-level God Spirits from the Fire Cry human race. In addition, after today's war, 5 more legendary tier advanced grade soldiers advanced to the lower realm. This allowed Zhou Zhou to have 596 god spirits under his command. As for insight defection, it was actually useless. Zhou Zhou and the other lords who had mastered insight defection did not expect the effects of the Fire Cry origin core to be so terrifying. The moment it appeared, it made most of the Fire Cry clansmen submit. Even most of the god spirits were no exception. Race divine artifacts are born from the luck of the race. If used well, it will be a supreme weapon for the development of the race. However, once it falls into the hands of the enemy, and it's in the hands of a mole who can use a race's divine artifact, it can also become the culprit of the extermination of the race. Zhou Zhou sighed. Fortunately, such divine artifacts had yet to appear in the hands of the humans on the cerulean planet. Otherwise, even he would have to be more careful in the future. As for the number of newly advanced god spirits, there were 10 fewer than yesterday, so Zhou Zhou was naturally not surprised. After all, they had already eliminated more than 2 billion soldiers of the Fire Cry clan with extraordinary tier powers. Even with the enhancement of the legendary tier blessing of the war god, it would not provide much promotion energy. Ordinary Fire Cry race members could not obtain the promotion energy at all. In this way, even the Ice Spirit's Sacred Heart that could increase the probability of becoming a god couldn't do much. After all, a clever woman couldn't cook without rice. Zhou Zhou felt that it was already quite good for 5 legendary tier soldiers to advance to the god spirit realm. Then, he looked at the list of troops. With the help of the race divine artifact, the Fire Cry origin core, a total of 2,325,605,412 Fire Cry human race soldiers had joined the Blazing Sun Kingdom's camp. They had already been assigned to a new army called the 10,000 Races Army. The army of all races specially recruited soldiers and god spirits from the people of foreign races to form an army of people of foreign races. This way, he would have 5 legions under him. The Blazing Sun Army was the Blazing Sun Kingdom's super trump card army. The Blazing Sun Army had no restrictions on races, but only elites from other armies could join the Blazing Sun Army. Zhou Zhou's ambition was to turn the Blazing Sun Army into a truly invincible army, the kind that could make the people of foreign races tremble in fear. Speaking of which, currently, his troops, excluding the Star Alliance, had a total of 76,893,415,116 soldiers. There were 1,299,699,472 black iron rank soldiers. There were 5,690,928,660 green bronze tier soldiers. There were 21,393,452,845 white silver tier soldiers. There were 10,735,753,835 yellow gold tier soldiers. There were 8,489,867,645 white platinum tier soldiers. There were 6,369,650 diamond soldiers. There were 4,139,647,935 extraordinary tier soldiers. There were 1,415,347,995 epic tier soldiers. There were 6,869,027 legendary tier soldiers. As for the god spirits under him, after today's battle, their strength had also increased astonishingly. Among them, Guo Qiao, Qi Xintian, and Yuan Song had advanced to high-tier deity-level intermediate grade. Vicky, Bai Yun, Wu Xian, Feng Luo, Suin, and Luo Shang had all advanced to the mid-tier deity-level intermediate grade. The strength of the other god spirits had also increased significantly. Zhou Zhou nodded in satisfaction at the end. Today, because he had dealt with many Fire Cry race god spirits, the strength of the god spirits under he had intensified much more than before. Perhaps soon, a true god tier will appear among the god spirits under my command. Zhou Zhou was filled with anticipation. Currently, Geralt, Kika, and true god Shenghua were true gods who had joined the Blazing Sun Kingdom halfway. None of the god spirits under he had advanced to true god tier. Thinking of this, he silently used the mental divination of the phantom race to calculate the probability of Heros becoming a true god tier. At that moment, Heros was in seclusion in the time world to comprehend laws. Zhou Zhou could only use this method to calculate his chances of becoming a true god tier. He smiled after calculating. Becoming a true god tier without any mishaps? Looks like I'm about to welcome a fifth true god tier under my command. Then, he unveiled the request to advance to the beginner empire and found that the request to conquer any of the lords of the beginner empire and possess its low-tier deity level elementary grade empire token had been fulfilled. He nodded slightly. The Fire Cry race was similar to the human race. They had true god tiers of the 5 major races. The true god tiers of each race also had their own empire-level lord factions, just like the 5 major human empires. After this battle, out of the 5 true god tiers of the Fire Cry race, only the master of the sacred fire was left. The 4 destroyed Fire Cry race empires naturally became one of the resources for the Blazing Sun Kingdom to advance to a junior empire. In that case, the only thing left to advance to the beginner empire lord level is to advance the territory level to the low-tier deity level elementary grade. Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. His territory had yet to reach the legendary tier elementary grade, let alone the low-tier deity level elementary grade. He would probably take a long time to advance to the beginner empire. Fortunately, he currently had plenty of time. Then, he stopped thinking about this matter. Instead, he unveiled his lord talent and looked at the densely packed lord talents. Then, he stopped thinking about this matter. Instead, he unveiled his lord talent and peered at the densely packed lord talents. It's time to upgrade a few mythical tier 1 lord talents. Zhou Zhou uttered excitedly. He had been anticipating for this day for a long time. Zhou Zhou glanced at the number of lord talent fragments in his king's treasure vault. Currently, he had 2,156,522 black iron tier lord talent crystal fragments, 1,336,025,000 green bronze tier lord talent crystal fragments, 9,239 white silver tier lord talent crystal fragments, 5,895 yellow gold tier lord talent crystal fragments, 1,600 white platinum tier lord talent crystal fragments, 355 diamond tier lord talent crystal fragments, 12 extraordinary tier lord talent crystal fragments, 7 epic tier lord talent crystal fragments, 5 legendary tier lord talent crystal fragments, 6 mythical tier unique lord talent crystal fragments, 1.3 billion green bronze tier lord talent crystal fragments. It's enough for me to increase my mythical tier unique lord talent. Zhou Zhou looked at the number of lord talents and nodded in satisfaction. His accumulation during this period of time was not in vain. Then, he looked at his lord talent list. Currently, he had 33 lord talents, and each lord talent had its own function. However, Zhou Zhou naturally had to prioritize leveling up. He took 1 billion green bronze tier lord talent crystal fragments without hesitation and fused them into a mythical tier 1 and only lord talent origin divine crystals. Then, he looked at the extremely precious mythical tier 1 lord talent origin divine crystals and hesitated for a few seconds. However, in the end, he gave up on the idea of transforming it into a new mythical tier unique lord talent. The new mythical tier unique lord talent was tempting and curious. However, what Zhou Zhou needed now were quality lord talents, not a large number of lord talents that were not very useful. He would suffer a huge loss if he obtained a lord talent that he did not need or overlapped with his abilities. For example, he would obtain a growth-type mythical tier, the unique lord talent, similar to the Chaos Sacred Body. Then there was no need at all. Let's upgrade the original. Zhou Zhou took a deep breath and chanted in his heart to use this mythical tier 1 and only Lord Skill Origin Divine Crystals. A text notification appeared. As you have 4 legendary Lord talents, Insight Defection, Master Thief's Robbery Gloves, Super Construction Engineering 9, and blessing of the 10 gods, blessing of the war god. Please choose one to advance. After reading it, he did not hesitate and directly chose to upgrade the Lord talent, blessing of the 10 gods, the blessing of the war god. As for the other 3 mythical tier 1 Lord talents, they were actually not bad. However, compared to the blessing of the war god, it was better to wait for now. Lord talent has been chosen. Upgrading in progress. The next second, he felt an extremely strong warm feeling appear between his eyebrows again. Furthermore, the feeling this time was much stronger than before when he leveled up his Lord talent. The warmth faded after a long time. A new text notification appeared. Lord skill upgrade successful. Congratulations, your legendary tier Lord talent, blessing of the 10 gods, blessing of the war god, has been upgraded to mythical tier. Your only Lord talent, 10 sacred blessings, protection of Terrence. You have leveled up to mythical tier. The only Lord talent effect is as follows. 10 divine blessings, the protection of the war master god Terrence. Specific skill effect 1, Terrence's supreme blessing. One of the 10 chief gods under the supreme will, the war master god tier, Terrence, has performed supreme blessing on you and your combat type professionals. You and your combat type professionals will receive an additional 10,000% promotion energy after killing the enemy. Specific skill effect 2, War Fanatic. When you and your combat type professionals reach the limit of your potential, you can break through the limit of your potential and reach a new level of strength through life and death battles. In the process of life and death slaughter and war, God spirits could comprehend their own nomological path faster in the midst of great terror, thus completing the accumulation of nomological laws to complete their own realm breakthrough. Specific talent effect 3, Master God's protection. The development process of your Lord's faction will not be hindered by other Master God level powerhouses. The Master God, Terrence, will secretly protect you and your Lord's faction, stopping or killing any Master God level powerhouses who dare to come and have malicious intentions. Specific skill effect 4, Guardian of the Divine Kingdom. When your Lord faction advances to beginner level Divine Kingdom Lord faction, the War God, Terrence, will automatically join your Lord faction and become a loyal worshipper of your Master God. However, you have to promise him that you will help him advance to the Supreme God realm in the future. Zhou Zhou could not help but gasp after reading it. Was this the blessing of the War God at the mythical tier? No, it should be stated that it was the protection of the 10 sacred blessings, the War Master God, Terrence. Good God. There were a total of 4 talent effects. Not only did the name of the Lord's skill change. Needless to say, the effect of the first talent was obvious. My combat type professionals and I will obtain an additional 10,000% promotion energy after eliminating the enemy. This was why Zhou Zhou was the first to advance to the mythical tier, the only Lord talent. Even if this was the only effect after the upgrade, Zhou Zhou was willing. The effect of the second talent was also very shocking. When one's potential reaches the limit, one could break through the limit and complete a new advancement through life and death battles. To other lords, this meant that their lords and their combat professionals would no longer have any potential limitations in the future. Even if his strength had advanced to the limit of his potential, he could break through to a higher level of strength through a new method, war and slaughter. This alone was enough to save countless potential advancement potions. And the most terrifying thing was that this effect was also effective on God spirits. He could even save on the book of the God spirit. Furthermore, a life and death battle was extremely dangerous to other lords. However, to Zhou Zhou's soldiers, life and death battles were very common. Every one of Zhou Zhou's soldiers had died once. There was even a soldier who often charged at the front line who had already died 116 times. He would die once in a battle. After reviving, he would fight again, treating death as nothing. If Zhou Zhou hadn't specially checked on his loyalty once and discovered that he was his fanatic believer, he would have thought that he was a believer of the god of death. However, it was not without results that the other party had died so many times. He was the first soldier to be promoted to a god spirit among the generals under Zhou Zhou who had been promoted to god spirits from legendary tier advanced grade soldiers. Moreover, the other party had already advanced to the mid-tier deity level. He was currently the most powerful new god spirit among the many new god spirits. As for his nomological path, it was a war-type nomological path where the three laws of death, war, and slaughter intersected. Zhou Zhou had ignored him ever since he knew that the other party's nomological path was one of these paths. Zhou Zhou wanted to laugh after reading the effect of the third talent effect. Originally, he had been troubled by how to leave the high continent in the future. It was almost certain that the lords of all races would fight a war in the future after all. Everyone tacitly agreed. Lord of all races were destined to take this step in the future. Zhou Zhou had always been worried. Once he led the Blazing Sun Kingdom out of the high continent, what if a lord-level expert attacked him? After all, most of the content of the Supreme Agreement was only used by the lord factions in the high continent. It was equivalent to giving the lord of all races a first and middle period of protection to prevent some lord of all races from being slaughtered by the lords of the top bloodline factions in the first and middle period. However, after the first half of the year, the lord of all races would have a certain level of ability to protect themselves or find a powerful faction to cozy up to. At that time, the battle between the lord of all races would gradually become a war between races. At this time, the lord of all races could gradually rely on the races behind them to carry out the lord war. At this point, this was the true prelude to the lord war of the 10,000 races. At that time, even though the lord of all races would still be from the lord of all races themselves, the civilizations and forces behind them could already interfere in the war of the lord of all races. For example, sending one or more experts to protect the lord of all races, sending a certain amount of development resources, and giving special help to other aspects. All of this could happen. Zhou Zhou was worried that an enemy at the Master God tier level would attack him in the Blazing Sun Kingdom the moment he left the High Continent. Originally, his plan was to use his Sword of New Dimension creation to open up a cross-border spatial passageway that led directly to another world. Then, he would use some true God-tier divine artifacts to conceal his and his soldiers' whereabouts. Then, he would sneak into another world to leave the High Continent and continue the race's struggle for supremacy. But now, he was no longer worried. With the protection of the Master God tier, which was one of the top 10 Master God tiers, it was basically impossible for an enemy at the Master God tier level to cross him to hurt him. As for the higher-level Supreme God realm, such existences were only loyal to the Supreme Will and would not interfere in the Lord's war. Therefore, Zhou Zhou was not worried about this at all. He thought for a moment before deciding to be more cautious. Use both options at the same time. If I really reach the stage of the Infinite Worlds competition, I can completely slip into the other world through my own method, then secretly participate in the Infinite Worlds competition, and finally stun all the lords of the 10,000 races. In the end, if I'm really accidentally discovered by an enemy at the Master God tier level, it won't be too late to rely on Master God tier Terrence. Zhou Zhou thought. Even though Master God tier Terrence was one of the 10 Master Gods, he was definitely very strong. However, he didn't know this person very well, so he wouldn't bet all his treasures on him. As for the final guardian of the Divine Kingdom, it was even more shocking. Normally speaking, a Divine Kingdom Lord faction only needed 3 true God-tier cultivators to complete the requirements to establish a Divine Kingdom. In the end, he had directly provided a Master God tier. Furthermore, it was one of the 10 strongest Master Gods, the War Master God tier, to be the Divine Kingdom's offering. As for the remaining 2 worshipped God spirits, he could just casually pull 2 true God tiers up. When the time comes, it was not an exaggeration to call a Divine Kingdom Lord faction with a Master God tier, overseeing it a top-notch international Lord faction. Wait. If the blessing of the 10 gods' blessing of the War Master God tier's blessing is like this, then will the blessings of the other 9 god spirits be like this? At this thought, Zhou Zhou's heart skipped a beat. Other than the blessing of the Master God tier, he also had the Wisdom Master God's blessing. If he could really deduce in this way, he could still obtain the protection of the Wisdom Master God tier in the future. Moreover, Would he be able to directly possess the 10 master gods as his master gods when he established his divine kingdom if he upgraded the blessings of the other 9 master god tiers to the mythical tier unique level? F***CK. If that was the case, wouldn't he be invincible? Zhou Zhou was shocked by his own thoughts. However, he felt that it wasn't very reliable. After all, only 3 true god tiers were required to establish a divine kingdom. Even if master god tiers were to be the divine kingdom's worshippers, there would only be 3 at most, right? Zhou Zhou was not too sure. He did not want to waste such a precious opportunity to answer the Bodhi Supreme's questions on such a problem. Never mind. I'll level up my Lord talent first. Anyway, as long as I upgrade my Lord talent, I won't lose out. Zhou Zhou did not think too much about it. Then, he looked at the remaining Lord talent crystal fragments. If I want to fuse the remaining Lord talent crystal fragment into a mythical tier 1 and only Lord talent origin divine crystals, I'm still short of less than an epic tier Lord talent crystal fragment. Zhou Zhou was speechless after calculating the results. He was just short of upgrading another mythical tier unique Lord talent. We'll talk about it tomorrow. When I gather them tomorrow, I'll upgrade the insight defection to the mythical tier unique level. Zhou Zhou thought. Following that, he stopped thinking and entered the time world with Zhou Wan to study the Lord's laws. At the same time, in the capital of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, where the forbidden archmage, Su Yuan, had changed his profession, more than 30 billion violent storm spirits surrounded the forbidden archmage's job change statue. Greetings, forbidden archmage, Your Excellency Su Yuan, one of the Blazing Sun Army's deputy commanders, who was also a mid-tier deity elementary grade violent storm spirit god spirit, who commanded all the violent storm spirit soldiers, shouted at this moment. The next second, the violent storm spirit soldiers bowed respectfully to the statue of the forbidden archmage, Su Yuan. Obeying orders. Invisibly, it was as if an invisible force had appeared from every soldier's body. Then, it flew in the direction of the forbidden archmage statue and quickly fused into it. Rumble. This formless and astonishing amount of unknown energy entered the statue's body, causing the entire statue to tremble and emit a shocking 4-colored light. At this moment, it was clearly a dead statue, but it seemed to possess come alive. His eyes moved as he gazed down at the more than 30 billion violent storm spirit soldiers around him. He was stunned for a moment before a faint smile seemed on his face. He had a thought. Mist cores flew out of every soldier of the violent storm spirit. Then, these mist cores all turned into energy and surged into the body of the statue of the forbidden archmage. Then, they underwent some transformation in its body and became the power to change professions. In the end, they turned into more than 30 billion lights of various colors that reflected back to every soldier of the violent storm spirit, causing them to undergo a complete transformation. All the violent storm spirit soldiers were experts who had experienced life and death. In the face of the pain caused by their transformation, their expressions were resolute as they silently endured it without saying a word. The forbidden archmage statue revealed a smile. He did not speak, but a firm and young voice reached the ears of all the violent storm spirit soldiers. Everyone, please guard our human race. With that, he took one last look at the center of the king's city, in the direction of the entrance to the divine kingdom's passageway. Then, the phenomenon on his body gradually dissipated, returning to its previous rigid statue appearance. None of the violent storm spirits spoke. They only bowed silently and placed his fist on his heart.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.